And welcome back to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me, Juan Zarate, our national security analyst. Juan, is always great to see you.
Bob, great seeing you too.
So let's take a look back at 2014 and a look ahead briefly to 2015. Some of the big issues. One that you mentioned, ISIS in Syria.
Yeah. What you had in this past year was the establishment of the caliphate by the Islamic State. That was a major deal because this was a group, terrorist organization that was able to erase the border between Iraq and Syria, establish itself as the best resource terrorist organization in the world, and really threaten not just in Syria, the Assad regime and stability there, but also the Iraqi state. And so putting Iraq back on the map for the U.S., forcing the U.S. president and U.S. policy to double down on trying to affect what's happening, put together a coalition, put boots back on the ground to try to push back and help our allies like the Kurdish Peshmerga. So that has been a dramatic development, and ISIS in many ways has rejuvenated the very notion of a caliphate and has given sort of life to the imaginings of the jihadis around the world. And that really is dangerous, and it's why it's been such a big issue in 2014.
And in some ways, ISIS has now eclipsed al-Qaeda, at least in the public mind, in terms of threat number one.
That's exactly right, and the draw for foreign fighters as well, which is a key issue for counterterrorism officials.
Another major issue this year has been Ukraine and the Russian incursion there, the takeover of Crimea, the ongoing fighting in eastern Ukraine.
The downing of MH17.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is important for lots of reasons. Obviously, the conflict matters to the Ukrainian people, the people who've suffered the downing of MH17, the innocent people on that plane. But really what has happened is the change of posture and relationship with the Russian state itself. Putin is clearly in confrontational mode. He's in aggrandizement mode for the Russian state and trying to recapture Russian influence and grandeur on the world stage. And that has meant conflict in the Ukraine, which he sees as principally a part of the Russian empire and sphere of influence. And that's why he decided to take over Crimea and to continue to try to influence in eastern Ukraine, even despite sanctions, even despite international program, and despite diplomatic efforts. The Russians have changed the landscape, and that has been a major development in 2014.
It's an issue that literally had us redraw the map. I mean, it looks different.
That's right, and ask the question, what's the future of the relationship with Russia, which is yet to be answered.
Other big issue from 2014 really is a theater of battle, cyber.
Yeah, I think 2014 has really been a moment of clear reflection for the public as to the seriousness of the cyber espionage and security issues that we face. You had the retail breaches in Target, Home Depot, where people felt very clearly that their personal data, their financial data was at risk. You've had the financial industry come under direct assault now for several months, with the most dramatic breach being the JP Morgan breach coming out of Russia, the experts believe. And then finally, to close out 2014, this major hack of Sony Pictures and Sony itself as the North Koreans await the publication of this film, The Interview, which they consider to be an insult. And most experts believe that the North Koreans are behind this assault. And so in those episodes, in this year of cyber intrusions, I think you have an awakening in the public's mind of the real risks that we face from both state and non-state actors to our personal data and to our systems online.
And just quickly, let's look ahead to 2015. What's on your plate of things to do?
Well, I think everyone has to watch Iran. Iran remains a central issue, question of stability in the region. Iran continues to meddle around the Middle East, continuing to expand its influence, and also continuing to develop its nuclear program. And so the nuclear negotiations with Iran and where Iran sits amid this sort of tumultuous region with allies like the Saudis and the Egyptians watching very carefully, and the Turks watching very carefully what happens with Iran, that could be a very important flashpoint to watch. And if a deal is not had, what happens then? Are we facing confrontation of a different sort with Iran in 2015?
And after Iran, you're also concerned about Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Keep in mind we have the scheduled drawdown of U.S. and NATO troops at the end of 2016 in Afghanistan. The Taliban seems to be more aggressive, going after more sites, trying to create instability and a sense of discomfort in Kabul. And the Afghans themselves asking for longer and more sustained support from the West. What happens in this year as we draw down, becomes a very important signal for what happens in South Asia and, frankly, what happens in Pakistan. We just saw this recent attack by the Pakistan Taliban. This is not a region that's peaceful, and it's one that in 2015 I think is going to be one to watch.
And the third pending flashpoint is a series of countries in trouble, what you call the arc of instability.
Yeah, the arc of instability is really that region from South Asia that we were just talking about, through the Middle East and North Africa into West and Sub-Saharan Africa, where you have conflict, division, even terrorist safe havens that have emerged. And I think countries like Nigeria facing a very real problem of a safe haven the size of Belgium controlled by Boko Haram, or Libya, which, as we've said here, it begins to look like Somalia on the Mediterranean, becoming a haven not just for al-Qaeda types, but for the Islamic State. Egypt, the Sinai, facing these problems as well. And then even Yemen, which has seen the takeover of the central government by the Houthi rebels, supported by the Iranians. All of these are regions ripe with instability and conflict that terrorists and militant groups are taking advantage of. And we've got to keep our eyes on those, because they relate to some of these other big issues that we're going to have to watch.
It's clear to me 2015 is going to be another important year.
We've got to watch it. Hopefully we'll have some positive news too.
I hope so too.
Thank you,
Juan,
Bob.
thanks as always. And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.